Hi, I'm Michael Croker, and this is Park Life. I've worked in the Australian theme park industry for a little over 30 years, and in this podcast series, I spend time in conversation with the people inside the business of making memories. Thanks for joining me. I hope you can subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy the ride. Shane Phillips has had a terrific theme park career to date. His humble beginnings from frontline duties to overseeing the successful launch of the Australian Outback Spectacular to acting as general manager across multi-theme park sites on Queensland's Gold Coast makes for a fascinating story. Here we sit and capture some of that journey.
Where does it begin? So it really began with me moving to Queensland in 1989.
Where from?
From Victoria. And when I got to the coast, theme parks was all I wanted to do. So, I had visited the theme parks as a kid with my parents, loved the Gold Coast, and out of the blue, my parents decided that they were going to move from Victoria to Queensland. And that's because we were in the footwear industry, and all my brothers, my whole family worked in shoe factories. And when things changed and the tariffs opened for international market, the footwear industry in Victoria just died. So it was the biggest area for shoe manufacturing.
And how far back did that family history go into?
So my brothers and I were 9th generation.
Wow.
Yeah, in footwear. Yeah. So we all worked as kids in the factories and whatever. And when I left school, I did a 4-year apprenticeship in pattern cutting and design. So I was a pattern cutter and I was working as that in the factory until it actually kind of went downhill, and we ended up selling the business, and my father moved to the Gold Coast to actually manage a footwear factory here.
That must have been a hell of a time for the whole family with that all coming to an end like that.
Yeah, it was, because and it was extended family as well. So it was like my mum and her sister and her mum and dad all worked in the shoe factory. That's how they actually met in the beginning. So yeah, it was extended family that were really losing their jobs as well. Funny how everyone just moves to something else and life works out as it is. But yeah, it was very sad for Victoria because the footwear industry just disappeared. It really did.
So you find yourself on the Gold Coast?
Yes.
And you were attracted to the idea of theme parks?
Yeah, SeaWorld, right or wrong.
Yeah.
That's
what was it
where
about that park?
I don't know. I think it's just, you grow up with those childhood kind of memories, and SeaWorld was it for me. It was just like a world that I just didn't ever want to walk away from, you know what I mean? You'd have to get back on a plane and go down to Victoria. There was just something that was quite magical about SeaWorld, yeah.
So what year are we talking when you applied for work there?
It was the year after Expo, so Expo was 88. I moved up here permanently in 89, and that was the first thing that I applied for. And I actually didn't get a job. I didn't get the job
What
that
happened?
I applied for. Well, I just went for a job in food and beverage, and just, I suppose, that seasonal intake that was happening, I missed out. So I just hung on for a few more months and then applied again and then got the job, and away I went.
What was the first part of that job that you had? What were you tasked to do?
Well, the first thing was I was actually pouring beers in the Endeavour bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just admired that ski show view from the Endeavour bar and the ski shows every afternoon. And honestly, I would be pouring beers and think, this is the greatest job in the world.
Yeah.
Like it was just so far from a shoe factory as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you're in food and beverage, you're pouring beers. Where does that take you? Because it seems that the parks were obviously places of opportunity. So what comes after that, and what kept you there, sort of longing to grow in it?
Oh look, I think opportunities always presented themselves for me, and so I was very blessed. So from the standard food and beverage, I then went and ran kind of the mobiles out there in the parks, and then moved into events, and then I kind of fell in love with the events department because I loved that coordination of bringing it all together. So then was supervisor, then was managing events, then was coordinating events, and it just moved from there. And I guess events really gave me a broad understanding of every department in the parks. So I guess that's where I just got opportunities, you know, from that point on.
That's interesting, because knowing where your career ended up, like you say, with events, you're suddenly now exposed to not only food and beverage, but there's elements of operations, entertainment, external vendors or suppliers where needed. So I guess you're getting a little bit of a sample of a microcosm of all the bits and pieces that are about overseeing a park.
Yeah, exactly.
Without knowing you're getting that grounding.
Yeah. And then in 2005, one of the greatest lessons, I guess, was in 2005, I was offered to put Australian Outback Spectacular together. So I had come to Movie World and was operating events at Movie World, which was really nice, a nice broad, all parks then. And then the opportunity with Outback Spectacular came up. And that was when I learned that all of that events background came to where it needed to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because over there it was the production of the show, it was the operation of it, food and beverage, retail, all of the elements that I was dealing with on a daily basis really came together for that event.
Along your trajectory to that appointment, was mentorship a part of your career? Did you have key people along the way that saw something in you that passed on insights? Was there people that made an impact on you that sort of reinforced this is where I need to be? Or
yeah, many people around me from all departments that kind of, I suppose, had an imprint. You know, I loved learning those little tweaks and pieces from every department. You know, like, you know, admired the announcers that were announcing ski shows and dolphin shows and stuff like that. You know, that was the show and entertainment side of it. Really, I loved as well. And I guess, you know, at that time, it was the Carol Podestas who were selling big business to big companies. The Japanese market was big back then. And, you know, it was a huge business for the theme parks, the events business.
There was a golden age there too, wasn't there?
There sure was, yeah. There was many years there where the international market was big, and they weren't little events. They were taking over the entire park with every part of it for, you know, massive 3-course and buffet dinners. So, and they were thousands of people. Yeah. So, and we don't see them like that anymore. Like that kind of business from a conference and events side of thing, you just don't see the numbers like that. So, yeah, they were golden times in the events area.
When the Australian Outback Spectacular comes along, that's another point in the Village Roadshow story of, I guess, reinvention and expansion. Was that daunting for you when that opportunity came, or was it just pure excitement? How did that feel? Because that was new ground, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it was. And in fact, I loved the events business so much that when John Menzies, and a man that I admired so greatly and had worked under him for so many years, formed a great relationship with him. When that came along, and I was working on it a little bit from a food and beverage perspective, when we were talking about plans for it, and I thought it was big dream and that it was really never going to happen, you know. At one stage it was planned for the car park at SeaWorld, then it moved that it was coming into Movie World, and I had little pieces of that all the way along. And to be honest, I thought, geez, that's bloody boring, same thing every single night. It's not something I want to do.
Right.
But the thing that did excite me about it was I was a horseman from previous years, so always had horses. That was a big part of my life when I was growing up. And so that was an exciting part of Outback, was the horse work in it. And then all of a sudden it really came to fruition and it was going to happen, and then it was thrown my way. And I reckon I did leave the events area kicking and screaming a little. Right. But then once I got into it, I realised what a mammoth task it was, and how, you know, how it was very much a great opportunity.
How long did you spend from the moment that Earth was broken to launching a show from the ground up? What kind of time frame were we talking?
I had moved over there. I guess I had worked on it probably 6 months before I moved there, and I moved there in 2005, and it was nearly 12 months before we opened. We opened it in 2006. Yeah. And that, you know, the meaning that it has to you when you give birth to it. I think, you know, there'll always be a really special place with me for Outback Spectacular, no matter what I do amongst the group. It's still, to see that still running 15 years later, you know, it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
What was that feeling like on that first night when you had I imagine it's a full house and it's unlike anything the coast has ever seen before?
Relief, I guess. You know, you get more of that. Like you just hope for the success on that particular night. And you don't think about it too much because you just got your head down and bum up and you're just going hard to make it the best it possibly can. But it for the Gold Coast, or for Australia really, it was something that was unimaginable. And so the feedback and the thing that you see people get out of it was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And it just went on and on and on thereafter, you know, for a very long time. But, you know, that was built with the thought of a 4-year life.
Right.
And we sit here now 15 years later and you just still see people walking out the door just loving it. What's
the secret sauce then, do you think? Why does something like that resonate and work and have longevity?
I think it was the topic, you know, the Australian bush, that whole way of life. You know, I would hear people that would, on a nightly basis, that would want to tell me stories. They want to tell me stories, strangers, you know, on exit. And it was all about them having a connection with something there. So whether it was an uncle or an aunt or a brother or a grandparent, my uncle used to do this, my auntie used to do that. I think Australians all connect with it, farm life, because that's where we came from. And people just want to tell their story, and whether it's not really even been part of their life, it was part of someone else in their in another generation that it was, and they just love it. They just connect to it.
Isn't that great? Because I think when people see themselves in a story, they connect, and that's a unique Australian story that no one else was telling.
No, that's exactly right.
I remember taking my parents, and my mother wept in the final moments.
Yeah,
you know, just about. I think it was just about the reminder of national pride.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that the country has a story that hadn't been told in a format like that before.
Yeah.
How do you, in terms of resilience, as you move through that journey, for people that might be listening, you know, we've got someone that's changed states, is restarting their whole trajectory of their professional life. At one point is pulling beers, and then in time is launching what is, in that particular moment, the single most exciting new attraction on the Gold Coast in Queensland. Where does that resilience come from, or that sense of fearlessness? Are you conscious of that, or is it it's just who you are, or do you consciously have to prime yourself into, okay, this is the next stage, or have you just found it to be a gradual transition?
I think it has been a gradual transition, and I still put it back to, look, as a kid I had show and entertainment in my background. You know, I was a dancer. For AOS, it was horses came into my life, horses left my life, entertainment entered, and then I came out of that and went back into horses. So it's just funny how your world just changes.
But how does that guy go from, he's a cobbler, he's a dancer?
I know.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you've got a ballroom dancing background specifically, yeah?
Yes.
But a very disciplined one.
Yeah, my wife and I, you know, had great results. I mean, we led the field for Latin in Australia. You know, we won Australian championships. We repped for Australia.
Amazing.
And travelled most of the world, really. We were very blessed in that respect. So yeah, there was a little bit of everything. I guess I get something from each department that matters to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you know, like going back to the question you just asked, I think it was just a natural progression. I don't think you're thinking consciously. What you are thinking about is whatever you're on at that particular time, doing your absolute best.
Yeah.
And that's all your focus is. And you know, there's problems to the left of you, problems to the right of you, and you just keep turning and solving the next one to the best of your ability. And I think that is just how I kind of ended up where I was. I just kept solving problems. I just kept making it the best it could possibly be.
Yeah.
But always having a little bit of understanding that I learned from somebody else in some other area. And, you know, people, I got to say, you know, people are great with giving information. There's not too many people that really want to hold on to it, because let's face it, when you're teaching someone, you're showing you at your best, right?
Yeah.
And I think I've been able to take all of that in from every department and all of our great leaders that we've had with Village Roadshow theme parks over the years. And I guess they just believed in me, and so I learnt more and more as I went along.
Great to hear you say that, and it's beautifully said. I remember one of the people that was a big influence on me in my formative years was the head of announcing at the time, Chuck, who's no stranger to either of us, and very unique character unto himself. But I was 18, and I remember I was really trying to cut my teeth as a show announcer and impress him, you know, because he was the guy. And I remember sitting down after a show one morning, and he sat me down and said, "Listen, right now I'm the best announcer in the park. There's no one that can touch me." And he was never shy about telling me these things, right? But he said, "I don't want to be the best. I want you to be the best. And then together, this team will be so much stronger. If you become number one and I become number two, then together we'll be unstoppable." And I remember thinking at the time, that little thought all these years later is still in my mind, of him being able to sit down and say, "I want you to be greater than I am in this, and take it further, because then collectively we're better." And I think, to your point, the stories that you're telling and some of the other stories I've been capturing during this program, that's been a common thread.
Yeah, right.
And it goes to your point. People have not been unafraid to share knowledge and share experience and lift you forward.
Yeah.
So Outback Spectacular as a singular focus for you is for how long?
Period of time?
Yeah.
I guess, well, look, I've never let it go completely, but I've certainly trained a lot of people up to take over and be able to manage that. So I guess really, probably 7 years ago, I took on Paradise Country.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my focus then moved to Paradise Country. And what happens? You have a need for those people below to come up and take care of something for you. And I've been blessed with having people that I was really comfortable, or I had developed to a point where I was really comfortable giving the reins to. And they've taken that on, and, you know, Pia has been an amazing person for that business, you know, in taking it over, understanding it. She had a horse background, she had a technical background, different to mine, a different background, but still had the ability to have learnt through our parks, started at Movie World. Frontline, started at Movie World, and able to adapt herself to move into that kind of role. So I've always been very comfortable with handing that over. But I suppose it was at that point that I did kind of walk away from it a little bit. And then 2 years ago, when I became general manager of all 4 parks in the Oxenford side, that was when I couldn't do it all, and I actually did move out of the office and hand over the key. And now, now I'm really still oversee it, but I'm that person that I'm the go-to person, you know, solve my problem. Yeah, I'll help you.
Can we just jump back a little bit and talk about the challenge that you had upon you to keep that space evolving so it remained relevant over the years of its life so far? Because I guess there was plenty of opportunities there that needed to be taken up to reinvent and reposition the show content.
Yeah.
How did you find that process when it came to you as it did?
Look, every time we develop, and we've now developed 6 shows, and every time we got to the end of that development of a show, I'd say I don't have another one in me.
Right.
That's how hard it was, Michael.
Right.
That's how hard it was. And I guess, you know, when you talk about a show that runs for an hour 15, an hour 30, when you think about the action that needs to take place on the sand, on the arena, the amount of work that it takes to develop the footage that goes on screen, I mean, you know, how much money and how much work does it take in putting a movie together? For an hour 15, hour 30, there's a lot of footage on it. So there's so many elements to it. And it's a high level performance. It's timing from a technical, the development is major in it.
Yeah.
You know, like we would go away for 1, 2, in some of them 3 weeks just to take footage.
Right.
And that was a joy, don't get me wrong. It was an absolute joy. You know, head out to the snowy mountains. We would head out to, out west to properties, and we've done all of that, which has been an absolute blessing. But you've got to pull a lot of footage in a can to be able to fill an hour 15, hour 30 on the screen.
How would you begin with the very idea of, before you even got to the stage of developing visual content, when you're developing the concept as a singular thought? Is that a collaborative process with a group of people that understand the rhythms of that space?
Yeah, it is, absolutely, because there is only so much you can do in a limited space on the sand, and so we would always put together a list, I guess, of horse work that would be exciting as far as plot something that would work, and then we would go back to find a storyline and there are many Australian stories to tell.
Yes.
6 down the track, and I still don't feel like we won't reach and find another one. So we would take that concept and then we would try and pull something together with putting the horsework and the action together and tell a story. I still think that Australian Outback Spectacular will have that Australian, patriotic, old-time story to it that people will continue to love. And we'll find the next one. Yeah. We will find the next one.
No doubt.
I don't know that I want to build it, but...
You reckon there's another one in you?
Of course I want to build it.
There's another one in you.
Well, you see, for the first 12 months I say there's not. And then by the time I get to the second year, I go, what are we doing next?
Yeah.
Let's go.
So what year was it when the role evolves again and now suddenly you're burdened with multi-sites? Can you tell us about what that period was like for you, making that transition or confronting that idea of the role now bringing in Warner Brothers Movie World, the Australian Outback Spectacular, Wet and Wild, Paradise Country? It's a big portfolio.
Yeah, it is.
What was that like for you?
It was daunting, I guess. That the funny part about coming back to Movie World was walking away from it. I lived here. Yeah. This was where I was based for 5 years.
Right.
And then walked away to develop Outback Spectacular. And when it was put on me to come back as general manager, it was the hardest thing I ever had to do was walk through the door, because I felt like the cowboy was coming from across the road.
Right.
And all I could think about was what this world, which was how many years? It was probably 9 years down the track. All of these people at Movie World that, viewed me as the cowboy. And I didn't mind that. That's who I wanted to be. And I was bloody great at it. So I was okay with that. But then having to walk through the door, that was quite daunting. Yeah. And it wasn't daunting from a skill perspective, because I learnt so much over so many years. So it wasn't daunting as far as skill. It was just daunting as in, how many mountains have I got to climb to actually convince everybody else at Wet and Wild and Movie World that I can do this?
How much of that is just internal noise though, and how much do you think is external reality?
Well, a week or so down the track, I realised that was all internal noise. And really, it wasn't something I needed to worry about. And it wasn't like nobody had heard about Shane and why Shane was probably being put in that position. And it was joyful, the greetings that I got as far as that is concerned. So a lot of it was noise. But just interesting, the diversity of our theme parks. It was SeaWorld one minute, it was Movie World the next. It was like, what the hell am I doing? Then it was horses and Australian. And then, so the whole world has been sort of a whirlwind for me. But you just adapt. Well,
that seems to be the thread of your stories, the ability to constantly adapt without fear. Adapting on the move out of Melbourne, adapting out of the generations of family that were involved in the shoe industry, in that business, adapting out of that, adapting out of being the guy in the Endeavour bar pulling beers, and now suddenly general manager of these 3 properties. Do you still find the joy in the simple things? Do you get time for that with all of that oversight? Do you still make time to find the joy in the act of performance or whatever it might be?
You mean personally?
Yeah, or
outside of work,
or even inside, going in and sitting down watching a show. Or
you know what? Absolutely. You know, last week when we launch Heroes and Villains, and we do a Heroes and Villains parade, there is the ultimate joy in standing there watching that parade for the very first time. You know, sitting in those meetings week after week after week and planning, and then standing there and watching it. I mean, it's phenomenal. Yeah. And you know what you have to do is, or what I've learned to do is, switch off from all of that product and work on and concentrate and enjoy the one that you're in right then. Mm-hmm. So that means that I can head over to Outback Spectacular, sit in the audience. I might be doing show notes, but at the same time, absolutely loving the performance and looking at what we've created. And that happens with every single park in their own little way. Yeah. Last week we launched a Billy T show, something as simple as the Billy T show at Paradise Country. Mm-hmm. And we changed it up a little bit, and we put Roger the donkey, who was an ex-AOS animal, and put him in this little Billy T show. Honestly, I got as much joy out of seeing that first little 5-minute Billy T show as I did or I do with anything else that we launch.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. So you've got to concentrate on your moment, live in that, take it for its best and for what it's worth, and just keep developing the next thing and the next thing.
That's beautifully said. You've obviously adapted well to all those environments, and I guess part of the success of doing that well is accepting and understanding people, right? Because you've got all these different mixes of personalities and then micro cultures within a macro culture that are all coexisting. Yeah. And to have oversight and leadership across all of that, I guess requires an ability to understand the nature of those groups.
Yeah, and they are all very, very different groups. Yeah. But, you know, I just kind of take everyone for what they are, in what area they're in, and you need to try and just understand their world. Yeah. And that comes easy to me, to be honest. Mm-hmm. It really does. There's not any area of the business, whether it becomes, you know, the board members, the executive, or the kid that's making a cup of coffee in Village Bean. It's just, take it for what they are, and develop them as much as they possibly can. I mean, I would hope that for people out in the park from any area that they're at, I would hope that they look up to me going, wow, he used to pour beer in the Endeavour Bar. Yeah. And in some cases, I wish I could tell people that. Yes. You don't want to blow your own trumpet by any means whatsoever, but you do wish or hope that they could understand that if that's my story, then it's your story too, or it could be your story too. Absolutely. You know? Yeah. And, you know, we've recently just been talking about the park orientation, and as I said, it's not blowing your own trumpet, but that's motivational for people that are making a coffee. Yeah. Or it can be, put it that way. Yeah, absolutely. It can be. Yeah. And you're exactly the same, Michael. You get that person that says to you, I don't want to be the best announcer, I want you to be the best announcer. And wow, what a gift. Right? Yeah, no, you're 100% right. What a gift. I introduced myself to some of the operations team that we have currently who are driving and chaperoning the Heroes and Villains Parade at Movie World. And I went down pre-parade and just introduced myself, and we talked a little bit about the training, we talked a little bit about tonight and had a conversation. And I mentioned to the guys that my background was very similar to your backgrounds. I was in operations and I was an attractions attendant. And so I can appreciate if you're down here at the front line, there might be days or nights where you're wondering, are we seeing? So I've just come by to let you know you're seeing, even if you have those nights where you feel maybe you're not. Yeah. And it created a whole different energy just by walking down and having that conversation. Yeah. So the next conversation became much more fluid, much more relaxed, because it wasn't so much it's a guy wearing a jacket who's walking around watching things. It was more, oh, okay, here's a guy who began a career in the industry like I'm beginning one. Yeah. You know, and those walls kind of diminish. Yeah, I think that's probably the unique thing you're talking about. Maybe that comes from that frontline experience. You know, you've gone for the interview, you've been appointed, nothing's been handed to you. You've gone in at the front line and made your way through. So having that empathy is easier to enact because it's not something you have to fake. Yeah, no, exactly.
You've come through it.
Yeah.
If I could just ask you, what keeps you excited after all these years? What still continues to get you driven?
Theme parks, full stop. They're fun, right? They're fun. The experience that the guest has, as they're arriving and even as they're leaving. If we've fulfilled their day with, and diversity. We're so lucky to have so many different and diverse products within our parks, and people they're not just coming for a one day, they're coming for a second and a third and a fourth, and we're showing them something different all the time. That excites me.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Tomorrow they're going to still be with us and they're going to do something new. That's pretty exciting.
That's great. Do you have a moment, I'm sure there's many, but if I could ask you to pull up one, is there a moment that sticks out in your mind where you remember consciously thinking, you know what, I'm really proud of this?
So many. Yeah, so many. But it's all based on guest, and it's all based on feedback, and it's all based on a smile on someone's face. And I think I was telling you a week or so ago that I went to a meeting at SeaWorld Resort, and I sat down at one of the tables, and I was having a coffee waiting for a meeting to start, and a little boy was standing in the foyer right behind me, and mum and dad and the little boy were talking about what did he love the most in that day. And he was talking about the Joker at Movie World. Yeah. And he just went on about this Joker. And that was pure smile and satisfaction on his face. And for me, just to have that being heard behind me, I wasn't the Joker that day. I didn't know who the Joker was that day, but it was just joy to hear that one of our products, one of our characters, was going to have so much influence over over that little boy. Yeah. That's blessed. That's blessed.
Yeah.
It really is. So there's oh my God, there's thousands and thousands of stories like that. We see it every day, Michael. You just got to walk down Main Street. We see it every day. Walk through Paradise Country, where someone's got an animal in their arms, and you just see it. You just connect with it because it's what we do.
There's a thread there for me that you seem to be consistently present. A lot of people in your role would be sitting there waiting for that meeting, thinking about that meeting and preparing for that meeting and what's the agenda and where do we start. But you're not doing that, seemingly. Or you're doing that, but at the same time, there's a part of you that's still present that can hear what it's all about, because the little boy's story is all that it's about.
That's all that it's about.
And you're able to catch that.
I don't know, maybe that's just I think we're all conditioned to be customer focused.
Yeah.
So maybe that's around us, and we're reading that, even though we're not on that at that particular time, we're kind of trained to read that around us consistently, because our business does depend on it. And so I think us theme park people, we just naturally do that.
I've got to ask, for your family and for mum and dad, when they look at the trajectory that your career took after the move out of Melbourne, was there a sense of wonder and pride? And I'm sure there was. Was there ever a moment where Dad was like, "Not a bad job, son. This is pretty amazing"? Did you ever get a moment like that?
Well, my mother still has a joke with me and still says, "When are you going to get a real job?"
Right.
So, and I know that's tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Because of how I've progressed, I suppose, through the business. But they do laugh about it and say, "Yeah, you need to get a real job now." You're like, that's not work.
Yeah.
That's not work. And we do feel like that, don't we? We're just lucky to be in these worlds that are holiday, good times, and and it's not work. When you love it and you truly love it, it's not work at all. Just blessed.
It's a great way to finish, Shane. Thank you for your time. Been great talking to you.
You're welcome. You too. Thanks, Michael.
I hope you enjoyed this latest episode. You'll find Park Life on Twitter and me, Michael Croker, on Instagram at Mike_Croker. See you next time.